We want to consider aging a disease, so the NIH will in fact fund it and put money and energy into the research of curing aging as a disease, because it is the reason that we have all of the symptoms that we die of, things that you've been told are diseases on their own, and you can consider that if you like. Cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, these are all due to cellular degeneration. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with this very funny comic. So this guy is saying, I eat right, I exercise, I don't drink or smoke, but I'm still going to die someday? That changes everything. Why would I bother? Why would I bother doing all of these things if I'm just going to die? And this has been the paradigm that we've been dealing with. There has been no change to this paradigm since the existence of the first humans on Earth, and now we're coming into this change. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why this has been the case. And this is the case, that cellular degeneration underlies biological aging and is the master disease. And I think that everyone here understands that. So new insights into science have proved this. As a matter of fact, almost every paper now that comes out of any aging disease, now we call them, it always talks about the underlying issues and why we're getting these diseases to begin with. Okay, so all of these things that we've batted at as symptoms, Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, etc., are symptoms of cellular aging and cannot be cured on their own. And what's fantastic about this science, and what I think that everyone's here to listen to, is that if we cannot reverse your visual signs of aging, then we have not been successful. Aging is the most visual disease on the planet. It follows a pathology entirely. Some people age faster, some people age slower. We'll look at that. Progeric children age very fast. So yes, in fact, with our science, you will look younger again. We're going to go through a historical perspective of how we die and what we consider normal. So normal is a situational opinion. It's really important that we define that. I think that your group is actually really good at defining that, but most of the world isn't. They're a bit locked down, and if somebody says that dying of aging is normal, we take that as a fact. It's like a truth, and it just shuts people down. But normal is a situational opinion, and normal has changed over history, and we're going to look at that. So this is a quote from Thomas Hobbes in 1651, his book Leviathan, and this was him explaining what life was like in the 1600s. Okay, it was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, and as a matter of fact, this was absolutely true. Most people died by the age of 30 of infectious disease. And here I am coughing up here. We still have infectious disease, I'm afraid to say. Okay, so here's the death records. I know this is very, very bland, but we have to actually study death to understand life, because how we die has everything to do with how we live, okay? I'm afraid you can't read this, but there was a myriad of things that people were dying of here, and they were all infectious disease, about 90%. Only 1% of persons this week in London died of aging. And so dying of aging was considered absolutely abnormal. Okay, we're going to speed forward and we're going to look at what that looks like on a graph. This is what it looks like. Infectious disease is killing 90% of people. We have various things killing 9% of the population, and aging is killing 1%, and we don't even know what's killing them. Okay, so not very good stuff, but this is normal. And as a matter of fact, just to speed up the presentation a little bit, in 1850, when the first immunizations came around, much like how gene therapy is coming now, people rallied in the streets. They said that, you know, this was against their beliefs. They thought the government was interfering with their life, but we're going to see what the advent of antibiotics and immunizations did to help these people, to help our people, okay? These were our people. We're going to speed forward to the causes of death in 1900. We're doing so much better. This wasn't that long ago, you guys. Still, half of the people, more than half of the people are dying of infectious disease. In 1900, there were 8,000 motor vehicles on the road in the US. That went to 8 million by 1920. We're advancing so fast. There are people who are still alive that were born before 1900 right now. They're the super centenarians, and they're hanging on, and we'll see if, in fact, we can keep them around a lot longer. We would like to do that. The historical perspective of one person is massive. The way that people solve problems that have been on this earth for a while is so powerful. You know, we have people who can't build a fire anymore, can't work on a car. Of course, they've made it so you can't work on a car, but we still have people who could build a car if they needed to, okay? So we're going to speed forward to causes of death in 2010. This is some of our most relevant data to now. And we want to look at how normal has changed here. This is what we want to emphasize. So death is down to 3% from infectious disease. As a matter of fact, people consider dying of infectious disease so abnormal that you might have noticed this. When one person died in the US from Ebola, it made headlines. That no one would have talked about that in 1665. That's just how people died. Ebola is a terrible thing. We're always going to be fighting infectious disease. As a matter of fact, we're looking at the genome for how best to deal with it, but we have a whole bunch of other things to knock out, and that is the rest of this chart. Okay, so if we look at this and we played a mind game and we counted everyone in here by threes, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, life static, without any change right now. All the number ones will die of heart disease, all the number twos will die of cancer, and all the number threes will die of nephropathies, lung disorders, frailty, and various other things. And that's not acceptable. This is considered normal. As you know, people out there in the world will say, well, this is the normal way to die. But actually, the great thing is what's normal for science is to overcome these things. And that's what we're working on now. It's the natural next step. So let's not stick around here too long, okay? We're going to do one more comparison. We're going to look at 1850, and we're going to look at 1850, 1925, 1975, and 2010 for purposes of understanding what we've done in the past. If you look here, in 1850, 10% of the population, 25% of the top population was dead by the age of 10. That's a big, big deal. And if you notice, if you look at our line here, we're not a robust society. We continue the downward slope all the way to the end of our graph. This difference that you see at this time is not having antibiotics and immunizations. And I know that not everyone thinks that antibiotics and immunizations are great, and luckily we have new things coming. But antibiotics were the first regenerative medicine, and they still work. They really have been the only regenerative medicine on the planet until recently. We'll still need them. They're still very powerful tools, and we're trying to make new ones. They actually save lives, and they get your health back to a normal state. The second thing is immunizations, okay? We're going to see this here. This is the difference in our death line here. This is very powerful. Immunizations are the only preventative medicine on the planet until gene therapy came along. And I'll be happy to tell you that gene therapy is both regenerative medicine and preventative medicine in one. We're going to look here. Health span is big business right now. To increase health span makes people rich, okay? This is what pharmaceuticals go for. They want to increase health span even incrementally, even if it's by 2 months to a year to 5 years. They haven't done a very good job of it. This increment that you're seeing here is 6 to 12 years of healthy health span. And this isn't because of any pharmaceuticals. As a matter of fact, it's not because of Pilates or even nutrition. This is the cessation of smoking. This is what it did to your population, okay? These are your people. These are your people surviving healthier. So we learned to add a few things like immunizations and antibiotics and take a few bad habits away, okay? These are really, really important things. Here's our problem. This is the problem that you guys are looking at. You know, we spend a lot of time just trying to make this line flat across the top so that you're absolutely healthy all the way up to the 110, 120 point. But this bottleneck is something that we want to look at. Why is it that now no one is living any longer than the longest living people in 1850? Well, we think that we're on top of solving that problem. Okay. So we've given up a short life and a fast death for a long life with some often long and debilitating diseases, okay? That's not so great when you think about it, you know? So, you know, of course, our natural next step is to take care of that. So is aging just a process that happens to people and something we can't change? No, I think not. Okay. Let's look at what aging is actually, okay? We're going to look at all of these at one time. So aging is cellular damage that's accumulated over time. It has a lot of symptoms and signs that go with it inside the cell. So we get DNA damage. We're going to talk about that briefly. There's two types of DNA damage. There's copy mistakes that your cells make naturally, and then there's DNA damage that comes from things like the sun and radiation and various other things that change our genome. There's epigenetic changes. This is the turning off and on of DNA. There's telomere shortening. And does everyone know what that is after having Bill Andrews here? Yay! I don't have to describe it, okay? But for those of you who don't know, it's the ends of your chromosomes, and they get shorter and shorter. And as they do that, we have a lot of problems that happen in the genome. They sort of keep everything tight and nice, like the ends of your tennis shoe strings. And when those come off, you can't really relace your shoe very well. There's senescence, and senescence is old, grumpy cells. They're cells that they're kind of ticked off. They are not going to multiply anymore, and they send out a lot of really unhappy signals to the cells around them. So they're powerful bad guys. Mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria makes the energy in your cells, and dysfunctions happen with them over the time. We accumulate junk. We accumulate misfolded proteins, stem cell depletion, and changes in the signaling pathways. So, okay, so we're a little bit on a downer, but we're going to fix these problems. Now that we know this is a big advancement. So think about it. In 1900, we just had a few cars on the road. We didn't know anything about this. We're working as fast as we can. Now that we know what the problem is, we can solve it, okay? Okay, so cellular changes happen when we're really young. I don't need to read this to you. You can read it yourself. I want to make sure that everyone understands what I'm talking about. Chronological aging, we're all for that. We want you to get older. We're not picking on anyone over 40 in this room, because I would be feeling really bad right now. You actually have aging as a disease when you're born. We already have atherosclerotic plaques in our arteries by the time we're 5 to 10 years old. We are developing cancer cells in our body. They can detect these in children of 10 years old. The difference is that our immune system clears them out. We have a little bit of a problem. We think that development is not aging, but when people are developing, they're aging, and they're accumulating damage, and things are happening. Okay, we tend to think of aging happening after 25 and then, progressively getting worse, but we have it the whole time. So we want to fix this problem, and we want to fix it in a way that creates a homeostasis that we have never seen before. We want to be better than how we were born, okay? So here is a progeric child. Some of you know the reason that I got into this was to cure childhood disease. I never thought that I would be speaking on longevity, okay? I'm very moved to make children well. When I started to look into the science, I met Aubrey de Grey, who's a friend of mine, and Bill Andrews. Bill Andrews has given me the biggest start and the biggest push of anyone. I started to realize that it was time to fight a new war. We could fight what I call the first old man's war and save our children and save ourselves in the meantime. We've always sent children to war for us, and this was an opportunity to look at the genome in a completely different way, and actually by curing aging, we can help many of the diseases that children have, including cancer and various other things. So this progeric child has a problem with laminin aging, and their telomeres are very short. They die by about the age of 15. Everyone knows who's next to Einstein, and Einstein actually didn't, I believe, die of aging. I think he had a hemorrhagic problem in his aorta. So, but he definitely was older, and it was a good comparison. Okay, so. Here we have number of deaths and the age graph, and this is where I'm going to state probably my last case for aging as a disease. If we put our finger somewhere between 15 and 30, our chances of dying of any of these diseases above are almost zero, okay? So that's kind of where we want to reset your cells to. Probably somewhere around 25 would be about right, but of course we've got to do better than that because we want to make sure you don't go back down this road. One last look at graphs here. Here's infectious disease. This you could think of as Ebola now, where people in 1665, you're going along, you're fine, and then bam, you fall down and you die. In the middle, we see a medical intervention. This is what pharmaceuticals have offered us. Maybe this person's about 45, they're going along, they have a thyroid problem, they start taking some medicine. It brings them up, but not quite up far enough, and then they have their next incident, maybe they're having heart disease and they get on statins. And it kind of brings them up again, and it's a slow decline. People consider, if you actually Google gene therapy, you'll see that gene therapy is considered an experimental treatment. It's an experimental form of medicine. I would say that pharmaceuticals are still an experiment and that they're failing us. On the far right, we'll see the long fade to death, and this is what the middle graph looks like if you zoom out from it. I'm not saying not to take your pharmaceuticals, okay? So right now you might need them to get to the next step, but I'll just say that, in fact, I don't buy what the FDA is telling us about it being safe and efficient. I think that actually more people will die this year taking their pharmaceuticals as prescribed than will die in the next 20 years of gene therapy. And I'd like to be able to stand behind that strongly. This is the last part of the beginning part of the presentation. So all hours wound, the last one kills. So every hour of your life, you're accumulating cellular damage from birth until the point you get the diagnosis of the thing that will kill you. We want to change that. Okay, so this is my company, BioViva. Okay, and I'm very excited about this. I spent a lot of time traveling. I spent a lot of time meeting the best scientists in the world. I spent a lot of time going to conferences and sitting down with the best people. I started a podcast so that I could actually sit down and talk to them personally and become their friends, get in their door and find out what was happening. We want to change everything, and we're going to do it in a very interesting way. Okay? With the advent of the human genome being run in 2003, it opened up a door. It opened up an insight to what was happening genetically with people. Okay? And we now know so much that we can start throwing our rocks and sticks and stones at it, or our gene therapies. And we're not doing it in such a random manner. As a matter of fact, we know enough that we can do this safe and effectively. In order to get something through the FDA, I would have to take one of my therapies that I collect from these masterminds of science to bring to my company, to bring to you. I would have to go and raise almost $1 billion. And that makes a very, very expensive cure, okay? So there's one gene therapy that's been passed in the EU. It's for macular degeneration, and you can get that therapy. You can actually go to Europe and get that therapy now. It's $1.3 million to save your eyesight. No insurance provider will cover it. So how do we actually change this paradigm? How do we change things to make things available now and in a way that we can actually afford them? Well, what we do is we burn and raze everything to the ground, and we start over. So some people call me the fire starter. I want to change everything. I'm not everyone's favorite person. But I'm okay with that, because what matters is the humanitarian side of me getting cures to you, okay? So this is one of my favorite cartoons ever. He says, the rat says to the person, I'm going home today. They cured me using this miracle drug. And I'm afraid it'll be years before it's approved for humans. This is happening every day, almost every week there's something. And you'll see something in the news how we're going to cure aging, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and then it disappears because there's the reality of how long this will take to get to you. Not only would it take me $1 billion to get this through the US government, it would take about 15 years of testing. And when I'm looking out there, I'm seeing people that don't want to wait 15 years, okay? This is a paradigm of death that we have sort of accepted, and I know that this group hasn't and I haven't, but this is what the world has accepted. We see mouse and rat studies all the time that give us great hope, and we're dying waiting for a cure. I think that that's a terrible way to be. There's a whole field of bioethics, and in the United States, ethics go kind of like this. A doctor shall not harm, and yet a doctor shall put you on every pharmaceutical. They'll put lines into your body. They'll keep you alive until you absolutely can't stay alive anymore, and then they let you go, and they actually feel like they've done a good job. I want to change that. I want to say their experiment has effectively failed, and that we will now move into what is considered on their behalf experimental medicine, but what in fact has a lot of safety and efficacy behind it. Because we're not doing anything too rough here. You have to realize we've calculated everything. So what do? So BioViva, we've already treated patients with monogenic disease with AAV gene therapy, and I'll explain to you what that means. Monogenic disease means that a person has one faulty gene, okay? In our case, we treated a boy with adrenoleukodystrophy. This is a disease that affects 1 in 21,000 boys. Only boys. Girls don't. They can actually have the bad gene for it, but they don't show it. They don't present the disease. This boy, by the time you're diagnosed with this, you have 1 year to live, okay? There was a movie made about this called St. Lorenzo's Oil. You may or may not have. Okay, so you know what that is. We applied this therapy, and the boy is effectively cured. Now, he has damage. We need to catch things earlier and earlier. There's damage that occurs, and we need to now learn how to do things like regrow brain and things like that. But, you know, we take one step at a time, and we are getting there. We're building gene therapies. We're the only company in the world coming out to say we're building gene therapies to treat aging as a disease. And what that means is that we can mitigate all of the diseases of old age if we're successful, and we think we will be. So we'll become a leader in genomic engineering, and I'll tell you the difference between that and gene therapy. With gene therapy, if you were an orchestra, if one person was playing badly, we would replace that one person with a good player. Okay, that's what we can do right now. We can put in one gene. In the near future, we'll be doing CRISPR technology, where we'll be able to cut out a whole big slew of genes and put in proper ones. Right now, we're good at doing one gene at a time. Genomic engineering is the future, and we'll be looking at the genome in a completely different way when that technology comes through, and meaning that one bad player, perhaps they were playing bad because they had a crush on the bassoon player, and the bassoon player actually likes the pianist. And now we have a big problem, and we'll be able to tackle it in a way that absolutely just mitigates it right in the bud. So how do we program cells? These are a bunch of Apple IIs, and I know that right now there's a bunch of us that feel like we have Apple IIs and everybody else has got an iPhone that's just being born. Or maybe an iWatch, but it's not true. With computers, it's true. We're limited by technology. We program them with ones and zeros, but with the human genome, we do it with A, T, C, and G. And believe it or not, the people who are born today don't have any different technology than you do. So we have no limits. So that plays definitely into your unlimited selves. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that our computers are basically printing out the things that we need them to print out. And so if we look at that in a closer matter, we have DNA and genes, and I'm going to not make this difficult. DNA makes RNA, and RNA makes protein, and protein makes you, okay? It makes everything about you. It's what this DNA is what you look like. It's how you think in so many ways. It's how you metabolize your food. It's how your cells clean up their damage. Young people are creating proteins that when we get older, we're not creating anymore. And so all we need to do is treat each cell like a computer, and we need to reprogram it. We need to put in the DNA that will then create the RNA and the protein that we need to be more youthful and healthy. This is what gene therapy is. It's not very scary at all. We start with a therapeutic transgene, the gene that we either need to put in because you have a dysfunctional copy, or the gene that we want to upregulate the production of the protein that it makes. We put it into a viral vector. So here we have viruses. That sounds very scary, but viruses are really good about going in and attaching to our cells and delivering their payload. With our viruses, we take out their ability to replicate. They can't actually make you sick. And then we put this transgene in, and they deliver it. They're so silly. We've outwitted them. And so they think they're going on to make more of themselves, but in fact, they're not. The gene goes in, and it starts creating the protein, and what you need to know is that then changes you. It makes you healthier and better in our case. These are our viral vectors. This is the adeno-associated virus. Why we work with this is very special. Okay, we work with this because it doesn't make people sick. It's very easy to work with. It's never caused related problems that they've had with gene therapy in the past. So it's not a big fear scenario. It's very effective, and it actually transduces, and transduce means it puts the gene into the cell. It transduces both dividing cells and non-dividing cells. And we have things called serotypes. And a serotype is a type of that virus that will actually target specific tissues. So we can deliver to the brain, to your skin, to your organs with different serotypes. And this is a really special technology. So our therapies, so what are we doing? One of the first things that we want to do is target Alzheimer's disease. And we want to do this with a very special gene therapy. This is a special gene therapy because it's the only gene therapy that has actually reversed aging in animals. And as a matter of fact, this gene therapy is the only gene therapy that has reversed aging in every human tissue it's ever been applied to. Yeah. That is really special. This is our biggest hope. Why it's never been used in a human body, I have no idea. It's been around for a long time. The animal studies had been around since at least 2009. I guess that's why I came along. I said there's people that are dying right now. We have people in stage 6 and